The observation deck of the Galactic Council station hummed with quiet conversation. Day One stood near the massive viewing window, watching distant stars twinkle against the black void of space. He had been Earth's representative for only 3 months, and already he felt the weight of representing an entire planet pressing down on his shoulders. "They're calling us primitive again," Hana whispered beside him. She was his military advisor, sent by Earth's defense forces to keep him informed. Her dark eyes scanned the chamber where 47 different alien species gathered in their designated sections. Day One nodded slowly. He had heard the whispers. Humans were newcomers to the galactic community. 200 years in space meant nothing to civilizations that had been traveling between stars for millennia. To them, Earth was barely worth noticing, a backwater planet with delusions of importance. The chamber fell silent as War Master Krelvar entered. The Vrenthi commander was massive, standing nearly 3 meters tall with 4 arms and skin that looked like polished black stone. His species had built an empire spanning 12 star systems through military conquest. The Council had allowed it, calling it natural expansion as long as certain rules were followed. "I bring evidence of human treachery," Krelvar announced, his voice booming across the chamber. A holographic display flickered to life above the central platform. Images appeared showing what looked like massive weapons facilities on Earth's moon. Day One felt his blood run cold. Those weren't weapons facilities. They were mining operations and manufacturing plants. But the images had been altered, enhanced to look threatening. "The humans violate galactic law," Krelvar continued. "They build prohibited weapons. They prepare for war against peaceful species. The Vrenthi Empire demands the right to respond." Day One stepped forward quickly. "Those are lies. Complete fabrications. We can provide full documentation of every facility shown in those images. They're civilian operations, nothing more." But the council members were already murmuring among themselves. Day One could see it in their faces. They wanted to believe Krelvar. The Vrenthi were established, known, understood. Humans were strange and new and unsettling. The council speaker, a floating jellyfish-like creature named Veltara, raised one translucent tentacle for silence. "The evidence appears substantial. What say the council? Should the Vrenthi be granted permission for proportional response?" "Wait," Hana said, moving beside Day One. "You don't understand what you're authorizing. If you attack Earth, the Vrenthi will regret it. We will defend ourselves." Several council members made sounds that their translators interpreted as laughter. A bird-like species representative clicked its beak dismissively. "Humans have such pride. Your species has barely left your own solar system. The Vrenthi Empire commands 300 warships. This would be over in days." Day One tried again, his voice steady despite the rage building in his chest. "I'm begging you to investigate these claims properly. Send observers to Earth, examine the facilities yourselves. Don't authorize violence based on falsified evidence." But Veltara was already calling for a vote. One by one, the council members registered their decisions. Green lights appeared on the display board. Permission granted. The vote wasn't even close. 41 species approved the Vrenthi request. Only 5 abstained. None voted against it. Krelvar bowed mockingly toward Day One. "The Vrenthi Empire thanks the Council for upholding galactic law. We will teach the humans humility. 3 of their cities will burn. Their orbital stations will be destroyed. Then they will understand their place." The War Master turned and left the chamber, already barking orders into a communication device. Through the viewing window, Day One could see the Vrenthi fleet beginning to gather. Hundreds of ships, each one bristling with weapons. They moved with the confidence of predators approaching defenseless prey. Hana grabbed Day One's arm, pulling him toward a private communication booth. Once inside, she activated a secure channel to Earth. "This is Hana, authorization code 7 Alpha Niner. We need immediate connection to the Security Council." The response came within seconds. A holographic projection showed 5 faces, the leaders of Earth's Unified Defense Command. They looked tired. It was night in most of their time zones, but they had obviously been waiting for this call. "They approved it," Day One said quietly. "The Vrenthi are coming. 300 ships. They plan to destroy our orbital infrastructure and bombard Korea, Brazil, and South Africa." One of the Earth leaders, an elderly woman named Chin Sun, closed her eyes briefly. "How long do we have?" "The Vrenthi fleet is fast," Hana replied. "Maybe 70 hours until they reach our solar system. Another 12 hours to reach Earth orbit." "That's enough time," another leader said. This was Admiral Taemin, commander of Earth's home fleet. His face was calm, almost serene. We've been preparing for this possibility since we first made contact with the galaxy. Authorization codes are ready? Chin-sun nodded. All codes are ready. The question is whether we should activate full protocols or attempt a limited defense. Day One felt something twist in his stomach. He had seen the briefings. He knew what full protocols meant. Earth had been preparing for interstellar conflict from the moment they learned they weren't alone in the universe. Every nation had contributed. Every resource had been carefully allocated. Humanity had built defenses that the galaxy knew nothing about. Limited defense won't be enough, Hana said firmly. The Vrenthi are bringing overwhelming force because they think we're helpless. If we only show them part of our capability, they'll bring more ships next time. We need to make them understand that attacking Earth is suicide. The leaders discussed in rapid voices for several minutes. Daewon listened to them debate the fate of billions. Finally, Chin-sun raised her hand for silence. We defend with everything, she said. If the galaxy wants to see what humans are capable of, we'll show them. Admiral Taemin, activate all defense platforms. Bring the home fleet to full readiness. Commander Yuna, prepare ground forces for possible invasion and authorize Protocol Nightfall. Taemin smiled grimly. Understood. Earth will be ready. The communication ended. Daewon and Hana stood in silence for a long moment. Through the walls of the booth, they could hear the council members chattering excitedly. To them, this was entertainment. A lesson for an uppity species that needed to learn respect. We should tell them, Daewon said quietly. We should warn them what's about to happen. Hana shook her head. They wouldn't believe us. They think they understand warfare because they read about it in historical databases. They have no idea what it really means, what humans really are. They returned to the observation deck. Many council members had gathered near the viewing windows, watching the Vrenthi fleet depart. The ships moved in perfect formation, a display of military precision that impressed the peaceful species watching. Veltara floated near Daewon. This is regrettable but necessary. Humans must learn to follow galactic law. Perhaps after this lesson your species will be more cooperative. Daewon looked at the council speaker for a long moment. Then he turned back to the window, watching the Vrenthi fleet disappear into faster-than-light travel. Yes, he said softly. I suppose we'll all learn something from this. Hana stood beside him, her hand resting near the communication device in her pocket. Back on Earth, alarms were already sounding. Defense platforms were powering up. Weapons that had been hidden for decades were being revealed. And humanity was preparing to show the galaxy exactly what 200 years of desperate preparation could accomplish. The council thought they were about to witness a brief punishment. They had no idea they were about to watch the galaxy change forever. The Vrenthi fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. 300 warships materialized in the void, their weapon systems already charging. On the bridge of the flagship Dominator, War Master Krelvar studied the tactical display with satisfaction. Just as our intelligence predicted, he announced to his officers. Minimal defenses. A few outdated orbital platforms. Perhaps 30 military vessels. This will be over before the day ends. His tactical officer, a younger Vrenthi named Koran, gestured at the display. War Master, the humans are broadcasting a message. They request negotiation. Krelvar laughed, a sound like grinding rocks. Negotiation? They should have thought of that before building illegal weapons. Open a channel. Let me speak to these primitives. The view screen flickered, showing a human in a dark blue uniform. The text identified him as Admiral Taemin, commander of Earth's home fleet. The human looked old by their species standards, with gray hair and weathered features. But his eyes were sharp and cold. War Master Krelvar, Taemin said calmly. You are entering Earth's solar system with hostile intent. Turn back now and there will be no conflict. Continue and we will defend ourselves. Krelvar leaned forward. You cannot defend against 300 warships, human. Your pathetic fleet would be destroyed in minutes. Surrender now and we will only destroy your military installations. Resist and we will burn your cities as planned. Taemin was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled, and something about that smile made Koran shift uncomfortably at his station. War Master, you've made a terrible mistake. But you'll understand soon enough. Earth sends its regards. The transmission ended. Krelvar slammed one of his 4 fists against the armrest of his command chair. Arrogant creatures. All ships advanced to Earth orbit. Destroy any resistance. Show them what real power looks like. The fleet moved forward, accelerating toward the blue-green planet visible in the distance. It would take 6 hours to reach Earth at their current speed. Krelver settled into his chair, already composing the victory message he would send to the Galactic Council. 4 hours later, everything went wrong. The first indication was a proximity alarm. Then another. Then dozens of them screaming warnings across every ship in the fleet. Koran stared at his display in confusion. War Master, I'm detecting massive energy signatures. Hundreds of them. They're appearing all around us. Wakey, what do you mean appearing? Krelvar demanded. From where? I don't know, sir. They were masked somehow. They looked like debris, asteroids, civilian satellites. But they're weapons platforms. Hundreds of weapons platforms. They're powering up. Krelvar stood, his forearms spreading in alarm. All ships, evasive maneuvers. Activate shields. Return fire at anything that... The human weapons fired. The Vrenthi had never seen anything like it. Instead of energy beams or plasma bolts, the platforms launched solid projectiles at incredible velocities, railgun rounds moving at significant fractions of light speed. The Vrenthi shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, did almost nothing against solid mass traveling that fast. 3 Vrenthi cruisers exploded in the first salvo, then 5 more. Then a dozen. The humans had positioned their weapons perfectly, creating overlapping fields of fire that left no safe passage. Return fire, Krelvar roared. Destroy those platforms. The Vrenthi ships began shooting, their energy weapons lancing out toward the human positions. Some platforms were destroyed. But for every one they eliminated, 2 more revealed themselves, dropping their camouflage and adding their weapons to the barrage. Then the missile swarms arrived. Thousands of small, fast-moving objects that maneuvered independently. The Vrenthi point defense system struggled to track them all. Many missiles were destroyed, but dozens got through. They struck Vrenthi ships with devastating precision, targeting engines, weapons, command sections. On the Galactic Council station, the observers watched in stunned silence. The tactical feed showed the Vrenthi fleet being torn apart by defenses they hadn't known existed. Species that had considered humans primitive barbarians stared at the display in shock. Hana stood beside Daewon, her arms crossed. This is just the outer defense perimeter, she said quietly. Wait until they see what's waiting in Earth orbit. Veltara floated closer, her translucent body quivering. This cannot be. Our intelligence indicated humans had minimal military capability. How do they have such weapons? You assumed we had minimal capability, Daewon replied coldly. You never actually checked. You just decided we were primitive and moved on. That was your first mistake. Back in the solar system, Krelvar was learning the same lesson. His fleet had been reduced by 40% in just 6 hours. The humans weren't fighting like civilized species. There was no honor in their tactics, no adherence to traditional combat doctrine. They used tricks, traps, false targets. They attacked from unexpected angles. They employed weapons the Vrenthi had never encountered. War Master, Koran said urgently, I'm detecting new contacts. 28 human warships approaching from Earth orbit. They're moving fast. Only 28? Krelvar snarled. We still have nearly 200 ships. All vessels form battle formation. We'll crush these humans in direct combat. The human ships didn't slow down. They accelerated, heading straight for the Vrenthi formation. Leading them was a vessel identified as the EDS Indomitable, commanded by Captain Jiwan. On the Indomitable's bridge, Jiwan studied the enemy formation with cold calculation. She was young for a capital ship commander, barely 30 years old. But she had trained her entire adult life for this moment. All ships execute attack pattern Omega, she ordered. No mercy. No quarter. Show them what happens when you threaten Earth. The human ships opened fire while still at long range. The Vrenthi returned fire, confident in their numerical superiority. Then the humans did something that made the Vrenthi commanders freeze in disbelief. The human ships released hundreds of small craft. Not missiles, drones. But these drones weren't trying to avoid enemy fire. They were actively seeking it out, throwing themselves into the path of Vrenthi weapons. Each drone that was destroyed released clouds of metallic chaff and electromagnetic interference, creating expanding zones of sensor disruption. Under cover of this chaos, the human warships closed the distance. They didn't maneuver gracefully. They moved with brutal efficiency, taking damage that would cripple most vessels and continuing to fight. Several human ships were destroyed, but each one took multiple Vrenthi vessels with them. G1's ship rammed straight through a Vrenthi cruiser, its reinforced bow smashing through the alien vessel's hull. The Indomitable shuddered from the impact but kept moving, its weapons firing continuously at point-blank range into surrounding enemy ships. "This is insanity," Koran whispered, watching the carnage on his display. "They're sacrificing their own ships. They're using suicide tactics." Krelvar said nothing. He was beginning to understand the horrible truth. The humans weren't fighting to win concessions or territory. They were fighting to kill. Every tactical decision they made was designed to maximize Vrenthi casualties, even at the cost of their own losses. Then the broadcasts started. Every Vrenthi ship began receiving transmissions on all frequencies. Human voices speaking in perfectly translated Vrenthi language, describing in vivid detail what would happen to the War Master and his officers when they were captured. Descriptions of human torture methods, human prisons, human concepts of revenge, psychological warfare, Hana explained to the horrified council observers. "We learned long ago that fear is a weapon as powerful as any gun. Break the enemy's will to fight and victory becomes easier." The Vrenthi fleet was breaking. Ships were pulling back, trying to retreat, but the humans had surrounded them, cutting off escape routes. More human vessels were arriving from Earth, joining the battle with fresh weapons and full ammunition. Krelvar finally accepted reality. "All ships retreat. Full power to engines. We must escape this nightmare." But Admiral Taman's voice came through on every Vrenthi communication channel. "You came to our home to burn our cities and kill our people. Did you think we would just let you leave? You wanted war, War Master. Now you have it. And you're going to learn what humans do to those who threaten our families." The surviving Vrenthi ships tried to flee, but human forces pursued them relentlessly. Some made it to the edge of the solar system and escaped into faster-than-light travel. Most didn't. By the time the battle ended, the Vrenthi had lost over 200 ships. The humans had lost 16. On the council station, absolute silence reigned. Every species representative stared at the tactical display, trying to comprehend what they had just witnessed. These humans, these newcomers they had dismissed as primitive, had just destroyed a major military fleet using tactics and weapons no civilized species would even consider. Day One turned to face the council. "Still think we're primitive?" he asked quietly. War Master Krelvar had made a desperate decision. With most of his fleet destroyed or fleeing, he committed his remaining ground forces to a planetary assault. If he could capture human population centers and hold them hostage, perhaps he could still salvage victory from this disaster. 75,000 Vrenthi soldiers descended toward Earth in armored dropships, targeting 3 locations: the Korean Peninsula, Brazil's eastern coast, and South Africa's Cape region. Commander Sung Ho watched the enemy dropships approach through his tactical display. He stood in an underground bunker beneath Seoul, surrounded by officers from South Korea's special forces. They had been preparing for this possibility for months, ever since diplomatic relations with the Vrenthi had begun deteriorating. "They're landing in the designated zones," one officer reported, just as the civilian evacuation protocols predicted. Sung Ho nodded. That was the thing about the Vrenthi. They followed military doctrine rigidly. They chose landing zones based on strategic value and tactical advantage, never considering that humans might anticipate such choices and prepare accordingly. Give them 30 minutes to establish their perimeter. Then we begin Phase 1. The Vrenthi troops landed in a large open area north of Seoul. Their commander, Field Marshal Torvin, was confident despite the fleet's losses in orbit. Ground combat was different. The Vrenthi were larger, stronger, and better armored than humans. Their weapons were more powerful. This would be a simple matter of securing key buildings and infrastructure. "Advance toward the city," Torvin ordered. "Capture the government buildings. Take human leaders prisoner. Move quickly." 25,000 Vrenthi soldiers began marching toward Seoul in organized columns. They had walked barely 2 kilometers when the first mine detonated. The explosion ripped through the lead column, killing dozens of soldiers. Before they could react, hundreds more mines activated, turning the entire approach into a kill zone. Torvin watched in fury as his forces took casualties from weapons they couldn't even see. "Engineering teams, clear those mines. Infantry, take defensive positions." But the mines were just the beginning. As Vrenthi engineers moved forward to disarm the explosives, sniper fire began picking them off one by one. The snipers were positioned kilometers away, using weapons with extraordinary range and accuracy. Every time the Vrenthi tried to locate a sniper position, it had already been abandoned. Then the civilian attack started. An old woman approached a Vrenthi checkpoint carrying what looked like supplies. When soldiers moved to inspect her, she detonated explosives hidden in her cart. 3 Vrenthi died instantly. Before their comrades could respond, children threw bottles filled with flaming liquid from nearby buildings, forcing the soldiers to scatter. "They're using civilians as combatants," Torvin reported back to the orbiting command ship. "Children and elderly. This is barbaric." In the underground bunker, Sung-Ho listened to the intercepted Vrenthi communications with grim satisfaction. They don't understand. On Earth, when our homes are threatened, everyone fights. There are no civilians in an invasion. There are only defenders. A woman named Minji coordinated the civilian resistance from a different location. She had been a schoolteacher before the invasion. Now she organized thousands of non-military personnel into support networks. Some planted explosives. Others gathered intelligence. Many simply refused to cooperate with the invaders, making every building, every street, every interaction a potential threat. "The Vrenthi want to capture our infrastructure intact," Minji explained to her volunteers. "So we deny them everything. We destroy our own power plants. We poison our own water supplies. We make this planet worthless to them." The same scenes played out in Brazil and South Africa. Vrenthi forces found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to follow any recognizable rules of warfare. Soldiers would fake surrender, then detonate explosives when Vrenthi approached. Hospitals became fortresses filled with booby traps. Schools turned into sniper nests. Even the local wildlife seemed hostile, as humans released animals infected with biological agents designed to sicken but not kill, maximizing the drain on enemy medical resources. Underground in a command center deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean, a strategist named Hyon coordinated Earth's global defense. He had spent 20 years studying every war humanity had ever fought, extracting lessons from conflicts spanning thousands of years. Now he applied all that knowledge against an enemy that had forgotten what real warfare meant. "The Vrenthi are trying to establish supply lines," Hyon noted, watching the tactical display. "Cut them. Make them dependent on what they brought with them. Then we wait for their supplies to run low." Human forces struck at every Vrenthi supply convoy. They didn't try to win fair fights. They used ambushes, hit-and-run attacks, roadside bombs. When the Vrenthi adapted, humans changed tactics. When the Vrenthi tried to predict human movements, humans deliberately acted irrationally, making no strategic sense until the pattern of unpredictability itself became the pattern. On the Galactic Council station, the observers watched in mounting horror. Council members who had never witnessed real warfare were seeing concepts they couldn't comprehend. Species that had evolved past violence were confronting the reality of a species that had perfected it. "They're targeting wounded soldiers," one council member said, her voice shaking. "The humans are deliberately shooting Vrenthi who are already injured. That's against every civilized rule of combat." Hana turned to face the speaker. "There are no civilized rules in total war. Every wounded enemy soldier requires 2 healthy soldiers to carry them, and medical resources to treat them. By targeting the wounded, we force the Vrenthi to choose between their compassion and their combat effectiveness. It's brutal but effective." Veltara's tentacles quivered with distress. "This is monstrous. How can you justify such tactics?" "You approved an attack on our homeworld," Day One replied flatly. "You authorized the burning of our cities and the deaths of millions of civilians. Now you're upset that we're fighting back with every weapon we have. You started this. We're just finishing it." In Korea, Commander Sung-Ho prepared for the next phase. The Vrenthi had finally managed to establish a fortified perimeter after 3 days of constant harassment. They thought they were safe behind their force fields and automated defenses. They were wrong. "Release the chemical agents," Sung-Ho ordered. Humans had spent decades studying their own atmosphere, learning exactly how to weaponize it. Now they released industrial chemicals from nearby manufacturing plants, creating clouds of corrosive gas that ate through Vrenthi equipment. The aliens' filters and protective gear weren't designed for Earth-specific atmospheric composition. Soldiers began suffering respiratory problems, Skin irritation, equipment malfunctions. Then Sung-Ho sent in his special forces. These weren't regular soldiers. They were men and women who had trained for years in guerrilla warfare, urban combat, and psychological operations. They moved through the chemical fog like ghosts, killing sentries silently, sabotaging equipment, leaving behind messages in Vrenthi language describing what fate awaited the invaders. Field Marshal Torvin realized he was losing control. His forces were trapped in hostile territory, cut off from support, being systematically destroyed by an enemy that fought without honor or mercy. He sent an urgent message to what remained of the fleet in orbit. We need immediate evacuation. The situation on the ground is untenable. These humans are not like any enemy we've encountered. They fight as if they have nothing to lose. The response came from War Master Krelvar himself. You will hold your position, Field Marshal. The Vrenthi Empire does not retreat from primitive species. But even Krelvar knew it was over. In orbit, Captain Jiwan's forces had hunted down the remaining Vrenthi ships with relentless efficiency. The Indomitable was damaged but still operational, leading a task force that gave the enemy no rest. Every time a Vrenthi ship tried to recover, human vessels appeared to renew the attack. On Earth's surface, the last Vrenthi forces were being cornered in their landing zones. Hyun had coordinated a perfect encirclement. Human forces didn't even need to assault the Vrenthi positions. They just waited, cutting off all supplies, bombarding the perimeters with artillery, and broadcasting constant psychological warfare messages. After 7 days of fighting, Field Marshal Torvin sent a final transmission. We surrender. Please, we surrender. Stop the attacks. But the human leadership didn't acknowledge the surrender request. Not yet. They wanted to send a message not just to the Vrenthi, but to every species in the galaxy that might be watching. Civilian resistance leader Minji stood among the ruins of what had been a school in Seoul. Vrenthi attacks had destroyed it on the second day. 15 children had died in the rubble. She looked at the camera that would broadcast her message across the galaxy. You came to our world to teach us a lesson, she said quietly. You wanted to show us that we were weak and primitive. Instead, you've learned what happens when you threaten human children. We don't fight for territory or resources or political advantage. We fight for survival, and we're very, very good at it. The broadcast ended. Across Earth, similar messages were being recorded. Soldiers, civilians, leaders, all delivering the same truth. Humanity would never submit to alien conquest. The surviving Vrenthi forces on Earth had finally been allowed to surrender. 23,000 soldiers laid down their weapons and were taken into custody by human forces. Field Marshal Torvin expected to be treated according to galactic conventions for prisoners of war. Instead, he and his senior officers were placed in cells and informed they would face trial for war crimes. But Earth's leadership wasn't focused on prisoners. In a secure conference room in Geneva, political leader Chin Sun addressed the planet's military commanders via holographic communication. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned with cold fury. The Vrenthi Empire attempted to commit genocide against our species, she said. They came to our world with the intention of killing millions of civilians. The Galactic Council approved this attack. We can no longer trust the galaxy's institutions to protect us. Therefore, Earth will defend itself in the only way that guarantees our survival. We will eliminate the Vrenthi Empire as a threat, permanently. Admiral Taemin nodded from his position aboard the orbital command station. The home fleet is ready, Madam Leader. We've also prepared the first strike fleet for deployment. Around the galaxy, the Galactic Council members who heard this transmission felt a chill of fear. The first strike fleet? They had known about Earth's home fleet, the defensive vessels that had destroyed the Vrenthi attack. But what was this other fleet? Commander Jae-hee stood on the bridge of the EDS Retribution, flagship of humanity's first strike fleet. She was a veteran of Earth's various military conflicts, promoted to this position specifically because of her expertise in offensive operations. Behind her ship, 200 vessels waited in formation. These weren't defensive platforms or patrol craft. These were warships designed for one purpose: invasion. All ships report ready, Commander, her tactical officer reported. Coordinates are locked. We're awaiting final authorization. Jae-hee pulled up the classified files on her display. For 20 years, humanity had been building this fleet in secret, hidden construction facilities in the asteroid belt, masked as mining operations, ships assembled in parts and brought together only at the last moment. The galaxy had been so focused on watching Earth itself that they never noticed humanity's preparations in the outer solar system. Authorization received, the communication officer announced. We're cleared for Operation Hammer. Jaehee allowed herself a small smile. Take us to the Vrenthi homeworld. Show them what human vengeance looks like. The first strike fleet vanished into faster-than-light travel. Their destination was 17 light-years away, a journey that would take 3 days at maximum speed. But they weren't traveling alone. Intelligence Officer Borum had prepared something special. Borum worked from a nondescript office building in Tokyo, surrounded by servers and data analysis equipment. For 5 years, she'd been gathering information on every Vrenthi world installation and military asset. She knew their ship production rates, their resource distribution, their population centers, their defense networks. She knew everything. Transmitting tactical packages to the fleet now, Borum said, her fingers dancing across multiple keyboards. Every ship will have complete intelligence on their targets. The Vrenthi won't know what hit them. On the Galactic Council station, panic was beginning to set in. Day One had informed them that Earth was launching a counterattack, but he refused to provide details. Veltara and the other council members demanded information, threatened sanctions, pleaded for restraint. Day One ignored them all. You had your chance to prevent this, he told the assembled council. You chose to authorize violence against my people. Now you'll watch what happens when humans decide to end a threat permanently. Hana stood beside him, monitoring military communications. The first strike fleet is 2 days out from the Vrenthi homeworld. Captain Jiwan's battle group is pursuing the scattered remnants of their attack fleet. Ground Commander Yuna reports all Vrenthi prisoners are secured. Everything is proceeding according to plan. One council member, a species that resembled a large insect, buzzed nervously. You cannot attack the Vrenthi homeworld. That violates every galactic law. Billions of civilians live there. The Vrenthi plan to attack our homeworld and kill our civilians. Hana replied coldly. Why should they be protected when they offered us no such protection? Because we are supposed to be civilized. Veltara insisted. This is barbarism. This is exactly the kind of violence the Galactic Council exists to prevent. Daewon turned to face her. Your council failed. It failed because none of you understand what real threats look like. You've been safe for so long that you've forgotten why security matters. You treat warfare like a game with rules. But when someone tries to exterminate your species, there are no rules. There's only survival. Captain Jiwan's battle group intercepted a fleeing Vrenthi squadron near a gas giant in a neighboring system. The aliens tried to surrender immediately, broadcasting their willingness to discuss terms. Jiwan's response was to open fire without warning. No terms, she announced on an open channel that she knew the council was monitoring. The Vrenthi came to our home seeking our destruction. We're returning the favor. Every Vrenthi ship we find will be destroyed. Every Vrenthi military installation will be eliminated. They wanted war. Now they have it. Her ships moved through the engagement with brutal efficiency. The Vrenthi vessels were already damaged from their failed attack on Earth. They stood no chance against fresh human warships crewed by soldiers who had watched their homeworld burn from Vrenthi weapons. Within an hour, the entire Vrenthi squadron was debris. On the council station, species that had lived in peace for millennia watched humans wage total war. They saw concepts they had thought extinct: scorched earth tactics, collective punishment, the complete commitment to enemy annihilation. It terrified them. They're not stopping, one council member whispered. They're going to kill every Vrenthi they can find. Hana heard the comment. Not every Vrenthi, just their military and leadership. The civilians will be spared, assuming they surrender unconditionally. We're not monsters, but we are thorough. The first strike fleet arrived at the Vrenthi homeworld ahead of schedule. Commander Jaehee studied the planet on her main display. It was beautiful, actually. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. Billions of Vrenthi lived there, most of them innocent of their government's crimes. She felt a moment of regret. Then she remembered the intelligence reports of what the Vrenthi had planned to do to Earth, and her resolve hardened. All ships, deploy orbital positions, activate all weapon systems, prepare for planetary siege. The human fleet spread out around the Vrenthi homeworld like a closing fist. Each ship positioned itself to cover specific areas of the planet. Then they activated weapons the galaxy had never seen. Not bombs or missiles, but gravity manipulation devices that could trigger earthquakes. electromagnetic pulse generators that could disable all electronics across entire continents, and kinetic bombardment systems that could crack planetary crusts. On the planet's surface, the Vrenthi leadership received a simple message from Commander J. You attacked our homeworld without provocation. You attempted genocide against the human species. Now your world is surrounded by our fleet. Surrender immediately and unconditionally, or we will demonstrate what happens when you threaten human families. You have 1 hour to respond. The Vrenthi High Command met in emergency session. They were a warrior culture, proud of their military strength. But they had never faced an enemy like this. The humans weren't interested in conquest or resources. They wanted vengeance, pure and simple. War Master Krelvar was present at the meeting, having fled back to the homeworld after the failed Earth attack. He looked diminished now, his forearms hanging limply, his confidence shattered. We should surrender, he said quietly. I fought them. I've seen what they can do. They don't fight like civilized species. They fight to win at any cost. If we resist, they'll destroy our entire civilization. The High Command debated for 57 minutes. Then they transmitted their response to the human fleet. We surrender. Unconditionally. Please spare our world. Commander J. received the message. She didn't smile or celebrate. She simply acknowledged it and began the next phase. Transmit our terms. The Vrenthi Empire is dissolved effective immediately. All military forces will disarm. All warships will be surrendered to human forces for destruction. The entire Vrenthi leadership, military and civilian, will submit to trial for war crimes. The Vrenthi species will be placed under human supervision for a period of no less than 50 years. Any resistance to these terms will result in orbital bombardment. Back on the council station, the members sat in stunned silence as they listened to Earth's demands. This wasn't victory. This was subjugation. The humans were dismantling an entire interstellar empire. They can't do this, one member protested weakly. Daewon looked at the speaker. We can and we are. The Vrenthi Empire is a threat to galactic peace. We're eliminating that threat. If the Council had done its job, this wouldn't be necessary. But you didn't, so we will. And across the galaxy, every species that had considered humans primitive and weak began to understand the terrible truth. Humanity wasn't just another spacefaring civilization. 3 months after the Vrenthi surrender. The galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. The Vrenthi Empire, which had controlled 12 star systems and commanded one of the largest military fleets in known space, no longer existed. In its place was a provisional government supervised by human administrators, enforcing disarmament and conducting trials for war crimes. Secretary General Su Jin arrived at the Galactic Council station aboard a human diplomatic vessel. She was Earth's new leader, elected specifically to handle the aftermath of the war. Young for such a position at 42 years old, she carried herself with quiet confidence as she walked through the station's corridors. Daewon and Hana accompanied her, along with a security detail that made the council members nervous. The council chamber was less crowded than before. 17 species had quietly withdrawn their membership, unwilling to remain in an organization that had so catastrophically failed its purpose. The remaining 30 species watched Sujin with a mixture of fear and cautious respect. Veltara floated at the center of the chamber, her translucent body dim with stress. Secretary General, the Council welcomes you. We hope that Earth is prepared to discuss reconciliation and a return to normal diplomatic relations. Sujin took her position at the human delegation's station. She didn't sit. Reconciliation? You authorized an attempted genocide against my people. You approved the burning of our cities and the deaths of millions. Then you sat here and watched, treating it like entertainment. Why would we want to reconcile with you? The chamber fell silent. Council members shifted uncomfortably. They had hoped the humans would be satisfied with their victory over the Vrenthi and return to business as usual. Clearly that wasn't going to happen. We made a mistake, Veltara admitted. The Council recognizes that the evidence against Earth was fabricated. We should have investigated more thoroughly. We offer our sincere apologies and hope that Earth will forgive this error in judgment. Sujin laughed, a short, bitter sound. Error in judgment? You nearly caused the extinction of the human race. And you're calling it an error in judgment? No, Earth does not forgive this. Earth does not forget this. And Earth will not remain a member of an institution that treats the lives of billions as bargaining chips. Murmurs of shock rippled through the chamber. Day One had warned them this was coming, but many council members had refused to believe it. Surely the humans wouldn't leave the Galactic Council over this incident. One council member, a crystalline being that communicated through light patterns, flickered urgently. If Earth leaves the Council, it will destabilize the entire galactic order. We need unity to maintain peace. You don't have peace, Hana interjected. You have the absence of conflict because no one has seriously challenged the status quo in thousands of years. Real peace requires the capability and willingness to defend it. None of you have that. You've forgotten what it means. Sujin activated a holographic display showing images from Earth's history, battlefields from ancient times, world wars that killed millions, nuclear weapons that could sterilize continents, then images of humans rebuilding, learning, creating international laws and peacekeeping forces. Humanity fought itself for our entire history, Sujin explained. We perfected warfare because we had to. We developed weapons that could destroy our entire planet. And then we chose peace. Not because we evolved beyond violence, but because we learned the price of it. We built our peace on the graves of billions who died in our wars. That's why human peace is real. It's not naivety or weakness. It's a conscious choice made with full knowledge of the alternative. She changed the display to show recordings from the recent war. Human defense platforms destroying Vrenthi ships. Commander Sung-ho's forces fighting in Korea. The first strike fleet surrounding the Vrenthi homeworld. You called us primitive when we arrived in space. Sujin continued. You dismissed our warnings. You thought our military was decorative like yours. You were wrong, and that mistake nearly cost us everything. We can't trust our survival to an organization that makes such deadly errors. Strategist Hyun appeared via holographic communication from Earth. He had been invited to provide context for the Council. Now he stood before them, showing data they had never seen. For the past 20 years, Earth has been preparing for interstellar conflict, Hyun said. We analyzed every species in the galaxy. We studied your military capabilities, your diplomatic patterns, your cultural weaknesses. We identified 17 different scenarios that could lead to war against humanity. The Vrenthi attack was Scenario 9. He displayed detailed dossiers on multiple species, including many represented in the Council chamber. The files showed military assessments, tactical recommendations, and potential human responses to various threat scenarios. The Council members stared in horror, realizing that humanity had been cataloging potential enemies since first contact. You've been planning to fight us? One member asked, horrified. We've been planning to survive, Hyun corrected. There's a difference. We hoped we'd never need these plans, but hope is not a strategy. Preparation is. Commander Jae-hee appeared next, transmitting from the Vrenthi homeworld where she oversaw the occupation. The Vrenthi military has been completely dismantled. We've destroyed over 800 warships and decommissioned their shipbuilding facilities. Their leadership is standing trial. The process will take years, but when we're done, the Vrenthi will never threaten another species again. Beltara's tentacles quivered. This is too harsh. You're destroying an entire civilization's military heritage. They tried to destroy our civilization entirely. Jae-hee replied coldly. They're lucky we're leaving them their planet and their lives. Many human commanders argued for harsher terms. Captain Ji-won joined the transmission from her ship, now part of a new human task force patrolling former Vrenthi territory. Earth is establishing permanent military bases in strategic locations across the galaxy. We're not asking the Council's permission. We're informing you of our intentions. Any species that threatens human interests will face immediate and overwhelming retaliation. The Council members looked at each other nervously. This was a complete transformation of the galactic order. Humanity wasn't just withdrawing from their organization. They were establishing themselves as an independent military power, with the capability to enforce their own interests. Ground Commander Yuna appeared, speaking from Seoul, where reconstruction was nearly complete. The Vrenthi prisoners are being treated humanely according to our laws. They receive adequate food, medical care, and legal representation, but they will face justice for their crimes. We're broadcasting their trials across the galaxy so everyone can see what happens to those who attack Earth. Civilian resistance leader Minji was there too, representing Earth's non-military population. Our people suffered terribly during the invasion. Thousands died. Our cities were damaged. Our children were traumatized. But we survived and we rebuilt. And we learned that we can never rely on alien institutions to protect us. We must protect ourselves. Sujin let her people speak, letting the council hear from multiple voices. Then she delivered Earth's final statement. Earth is withdrawing from the Galactic Council effective immediately. We will maintain diplomatic relations with individual species that wish to trade or communicate with us, but we will not submit to the authority of an organization that failed so catastrophically in its primary purpose. Instead, Earth is offering an alternative. She activated a new display showing a different organizational structure. Any species that values real peace built on mutual respect and the capability to defend it, is invited to join Earth in a new alliance. We call it the Terran Defense Coalition. Members will maintain independent sovereignty, but agree to mutual defense pacts and military cooperation. We'll share human military technology and tactical knowledge with our allies, and we'll guarantee that no member will face the kind of attack Earth endured without immediate support. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Some species were horrified at the idea. Others looked interested. A few looked calculating, already considering the advantages of aligning with humanity. Admiral Taemin appeared to add his voice. The coalition is not mandatory. Species that wish to remain in the Galactic Council are free to do so, but they should understand that Earth will no longer consider Council authority legitimate. We will act in our own interests, using our own judgment, and we will defend our allies with the full force of human military capability. Daewon stood beside Sujin, looking at the council members he had worked with for months. Some of you treated me with respect during my time here. Others dismissed me as a representative of a primitive species. All of you failed when it mattered most. I hope you learn from this. I hope you build something better, but Earth won't be part of it. The human delegation turned to leave. As they walked toward the exit, Veltara called out desperately, "Please reconsider. The galaxy needs unity. Without the council, there will be chaos." Sujin paused at the doorway. There won't be chaos. There will be accountability. Species that attack others will face consequences. Species that value peace will find allies. And humanity will ensure that no one ever again mistakes our civilization for weakness. We didn't want this responsibility,